Welcome to EVTN News. We identify as the most watched news network on YouTube or even on smart TVs. I don't know. Whatever sounds good, right? Oh, is that what the kids are doing now? Is that what the kids are doing in high schools? I don't know. Hey, what did you think about the Fatima Consecration? It was basically as everyone expected. Do you think it fulfilled Our Lady of Fatima's request? I know that there are quite a few bishops who participated in it, also quite a few priests. And so, what does that do? I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully, was it the Lord of the Rings? The quote is, uh, what you say, help will come from the unlikeliest of places. I think that was from the Lord of the Rings, and it's certainly turned out to be true in that book, and that's what I think maybe with Pope Francis. Maybe could he be doing something that would help the Catholics in the world? I mean, could he do one thing that could be good for us? I don't know. Um, yeah. So we're going to move on to Cardinal Parolin, who contrasts Pope Francis on just war. Cardinal Parolin said the use of weapons is never something desirable because it always carries a very high risk of taking the life of people or causing serious injury and terrible material damage. And he told this to Spanish Catholic Weekly Vida Nueva when asked whether European nations should be sending weapons to Ukraine. But he said, nonetheless, the right to defend one's life, one's people, and one's country sometimes also involves the sad recourse to arms. So, he's saying, well, I'm against it, but there are certain situations that would make them necessary, right? Isn't that what a lot of people say? And on Friday, Pope Francis rolled out the possibility of just wars, saying they do not exist. So Parolin contradicted Francis. This really comes back to the idea of capital punishment in St. Thomas Aquinas. And I believe St. Thomas Aquinas says that self-defense is a form of capital punishment, and therefore it is permissible. And I don't think he even said it was permissible. I think he said it was good. I don't know. I didn't study Thomas Aquinas, but I just know that Pope Francis said that capital punishment is never permissible, and Catholics disagree on that. And even JP2, who took a very leftist stance in regards to capital punishment, said, hey, this isn't doctrine. Or he said, hey, my opinion isn't doctrine, which it's certainly not. Speaking of Pope Francis, he's worried about declining vocations. And so, let's see here. The number of vocations in all dioceses and in all Novus Ordo religious congregations are declining, Pope Francis admitted on March 17th, talking to Augustinian Recollects. According to the Prior General, his order went from 8 provinces to 4. Francis told them to get ready for 2 provinces and alluded to the day when there will be no more Augustinian Recollects. Wow. Okay. He's not a prophet, Francis insisted, but he said it worries me that the day may come when there will be not enough priestly vocations for everyone. And so, what is his solution? Well, I'm sure all of you can guess this if you've been watching this channel, following this channel. His solution is to prepare the laity to continue with pastoral care. Are you ready for a woman to lead your parish? I think that's something they've been, this is something that's been brewing for a long time, and you can tell it with these synods. You get these super leftists, and they say, why can't women lead parishes? Why can't women have, they didn't even say that. They said, why can't women have leadership roles? What's a leadership role? What are they going to be doing? They already teach catechism, which they don't call it catechism. What faith formation is the typical term for it. So they don't teach. They already do that. What's the only leadership role left for women in Novus Ordo parishes? It's to give the homily. You know, and I was thinking about this on Good Friday and Palm Sunday in the Novus Ordo. And is there another? I don't think Holy Thursday, but in the Novus Ordo on Good Friday and Palm Sunday, there are not just men reading the gospel. Think about that. Everyone participates in the gospel reading. Active participation, all that good stuff. But they do have women reading the gospel. Oh, that's an exception. No, I don't know. I don't know, people. I don't know. Our Sunday Visitor. I don't really read a lot about this, but it was posted on Canon 212. And if you're not following Frank on Canon 212, follow him. It's worth your time. You know, if you only have a few minutes every day to browse through the news, go to Canon 212 and you can see some of the headlines of the day. It's a good website. I'd recommend it. Our Sunday Visitor posts an article titled, "Which direction should we face when praying at Mass?" Well, you know my opinion on that. The basic minimum for a reverent Novus Ordo is it should be ad orientem. That's the minimum to call a Novus Ordo reverent, if you even do that at all. But the author is Timothy O'Malley, PhD from the University of Notre Dame, and he actually made some good points and addressed common misconceptions about the ad orientem liturgy. There are people who oppose ad orientem, and he talked about these are misconceptions. But then he says, so what are we to do? I believe both postures, in fact, are needed in the church. He says that both postures are needed in the church. Both are theologically, liturgically, and spiritually fruitful. Next month's column will make that argument. Okay, so this is definitely wrong. They had one posture for how many centuries, the priest faced the altar, and he does talk about the altar and how, it's a freestanding altar and all this stuff. No, you can have a traditional altar. And he says both are theologically, liturgically, and spiritually fruitful. I don't know if I'm going to try to follow up on this or not, because I'm not sure if I'll find it. But I don't see how freestanding altar, he doesn't say traditional, that's good. Theologically, liturgically, and spiritually fruitful. So the Byzantines actually have a freestanding altar, but the priest actually has sort of an ad orientem liturgy in the Byzantine Rite. So even if you have a freestanding altar, you don't need to say Mass facing the people. And liturgically fruitful, what about spiritually fruitful? Is it spiritually fruitful for the priest when he looks at the people and feels need to perform, make some crazy jokes, and I don't know. All right, speaking of the Novus Ordo, Pope Francis concelebrated a Novus Ordo without wearing appropriate liturgical vestments. So Father Gerald Murray, remember him, he's on Raymond Arroyo's show World Over. He's part of the Papal Posse, I think is what it's called. And he wrote an article. I have some clips from that article, and I just want you to get this background here on what's going on. So on March 12th, Pope Francis went to the Jesuit Church of Gesù in Rome for a Mass on the occasion of the 400th anniversary of the canonizations of St. Ignatius Loyola and St. Francis Xavier. The Pope preached at the Mass and concelebrated. He had earlier been scheduled to be the principal celebrant, but Father Arturo Sosa, S.J., Superior General of the Jesuits, for some reason was the principal celebrant instead. So remember Father Sosa, apparently he said that the devil was just a symbol and he denied it, but who really knows the truth? I don't know. Anyway, liturgical theology and law do not countenance that a bishop, let alone the diocesan bishop in his own diocese, concelebrate Mass with the priest as the principal celebrant, apart from a grave necessity such as an infirmity. So that means if the priest, or if the bishop is, maybe not able to walk, liturgical theology and law. Okay, so this is like new canon law because concelebration is a fabrication of Vatican II. Anyway, this flows from the nature of the episcopal office. The bishop is the high priest in his diocese. He offers a sacrifice of the Mass for his people, while his priests, co workers who serve the local church under his authority, concelebrate with him. Yeah, which is still Vatican II theology. Anyway, the Mass began with the usual entrance procession. Pope Francis was already seated in a chair near the altar. So I don't think this is actually a complaint because apparently he was walking very badly. Um, I think that's pretty typical, and I don't think that's any complaint. Pope Francis wore no liturgical vestments and thus gave no indication that he was either concelebrating or presiding. He preached without wearing the liturgical garments, mozzetta, roche, and stole, that are prescribed to be worn when the preacher is not the one celebrating the Mass. He concelebrated, extending his hand and saying the words of the consecration without wearing Mass vestments, alb, stole, and chasuble. This practice is strictly forbidden. In its 2004 Instruction in Redemptionis Sacramentum, the Congregation for Divine Worship stated, the abuse is reprobated, whereby the sacred ministers celebrate Holy Mass or other rites without sacred vestments. And I think it was also in the, which to me, I don't think they shouldn't be used at all. So Father Murray asks, is the Pope subject to liturgical law? Yes. Can he dispense himself from liturgical laws? Yes, but Canon 90 states that there must be a just and reasonable cause for dispensation. Did Pope Francis canonically dispense himself from the requirement to wear liturgical vestments when preaching at and concelebrating Mass? He may have, but the Holy See has given no indication in that he in fact did so. And so these moderates, well, I don't know, probably call him a conservative. I don't even know. He might be a traditionalist. He celebrates the Latin Mass, but I guess him pointing this out is pretty interesting. But for most of us, it's not really. Quite honestly, I'm not even sure that this is very relevant to many of us because this is really the Novus Ordo theology. Is just make it up as you go. And Pope Francis is doing that, and a lot of priests do that and follow his lead. So why would... and Father Murray is, of course, not happy about it. But why would anyone be surprised? Why would anyone... I don't know. Like, isn't this really to be expected? 50 years of Novus Ordo, and this is kind of what you get. Father Gerald Murray had other things to say about Pope Francis on EWTN's The World Over on March 17th. He said, an honest and thorough look at the life of the Church today has to say, have the actions of Pope Francis contributed to the mission of the Church flourishing or being damaged? And in certain areas, there's a lot of damage, pointing to the Latin Mass. And then on the level of just management, this arbitrary removal of the Bishop of Arecibo, Puerto Rico, is a symbol of, unfortunately, how the pontificate is sort of drifting in the direction of agree with us or we're going to slap you down. That is not Christianity. Whoa. And so he was referring to Bishop Fernandez Torres, who was a staunch defender of Catholic teaching, who announced in a statement that he was being forced out of his diocese over allegations of disobedience to the Pope, lack of communion with fellow Puerto Rican bishops. His dismissal came after he declined to sign a letter issued by the Puerto Rican Episcopal Conference last year announcing segregation at Mass based on jab status. And this is why Father Murray and Raymond Arroyo are being blacklisted by a lot of the mainstreams. This was on Raymond Arroyo's World Over show, and it's why the Cincinnati Archbishop, encouraged people not to attend a conference with Raymond Arroyo speaking, because Raymond Arroyo is pointing things out. He's having on guests that don't spew the narrative these bishops want people to hear. And that's reasonable hope that all are saved. Everything's just great in the Catholic Church. And those of us with eyes to see can see that's not the case. Everything's not great. All are welcome, but should they all be welcome? That's the question. They're welcome to come, but are their ideas welcome, I guess, is the real question. And the answer is their ideas are welcome if they contradict the Catholic faith in a lot of cases, which is a very big concern and disappointment. Speaking of jabs, the 15th century Santa Caterina Benedictine Monastery in Perugia, Italy, will be closed after an unexpected February apostolic visitation. The 5 nuns, not all of them old, will be transferred to other monasteries, and they were expecting a postulant, so they were growing. The visitor found everything in order except we are not jabbed, Abbess Mother Catherine, a former scientific researcher, told La Nuova BQ.Italy, March 22nd. She said, I can confirm that this is the only explanation they gave me at the end of the apostolic visitation. So they're getting shut down because they're not virus religion, jab happy, and it's pretty interesting. Okay. All right. Diocese. Okay, so now we're moving into the sale of church buildings. Okay, a parish in the Diocese of Rochester, New York, sold a closed Catholic church this January to the Bhakti Marga Hindu movement to be renovated into the first U.S. temple of the Hindu group. After the renovation, the church will be used for Hindu worship and will include iconography of Hindu deities and other Hindu religious symbols alongside the Catholic religious symbols already in the building. The group will also display a parish statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary alongside a Hindu goddess on the property. So this story was released by The Pillar, and they did a little bit more research for the next story also, but I want to talk about this. So this is Rochester, New York, former Diocese of Fulton Sheen, and I think this bishop the one who was kind of trying to undermine the canonization problem. I don't even, we talk about canonizations, and Fulton Sheen hasn't even been dead for 50 years. So what's the deal? I mean, are we traditionalists or not? Okay. So another thing about Hindus is Lord of the Dance. You might remember my video that I released about the song Lord of the Dance. It was inspired by a Hindu god. This person wrote it, and he was surprised that it picked up steam in Christian churches. And he said he was inspired by a Hindu statue on his desk. But yeah, what are the restrictions whenever they're selling parishes? I mean, do they pre-screen? Because, they would never, ever want to sell a parish to the SSPX. But they'll sell it to a Hindu group. That's fine. Vatican II actually is favorable towards Hindus. They're seeking the path of enlightenment. I'm not exactly sure what Nostra Aetate says about the Hindus, but I know it's something. It does definitely sound favorable, and so the Hindus. It's another religion, and we shouldn't dismiss it. They're seeking the path of enlightenment. But the SSPX, JP2 said he excommunicated them, and the Ecclesia Dei groups are justified because they accept the new doctrines of Vatican II, even though they are difficult to understand. Okay. Anyway, Pope Benedict the 16th, what did he say? What would you say? He basically invalidated Ecclesia Dei with Summorum Pontificum, and then Pope Francis did away with Summorum Pontificum. So the Latin Mass has just been a power struggle. But at the end of the day, it's the traditional Mass of the Church. It is the unique expression of the Roman Rite, and that is that. So another story by the Pillar, they also talked about in 2011, St. Mary Presentation Catholic Church in eastern Washington town of Deer Park outgrew its parish church building, and parishioners raised money and built a new church. The old church was sold, and in 2011 they sold its former church building to the Boyer Mountain Masonic Lodge, the local chapter of the Freemasons. The Pillar says, I'm going to read from the Pillar, and I think you might have an idea, because the Pillar doesn't know. They say it is not clear why the relevant diocesan bishop of Spokane, Washington at the time, Bishop Blaise Cupich, signed off on the 2011 sale of the former St. Mary Presentation Catholic Church to the Masonic Lodge. Do you have any ideas why, knowing the name of the bishop? And I was talking to some people, and I asked, well, I wonder what groups they wouldn't sell a church to at this point. I know some dioceses are kind of picky. They won't sell to Protestant churches, but most will. They won't sell to the SSPX. They will not. But will they sell to Hindus? Yes. Will they sell to Freemasons? Yes. Will all the bishops sell their church to a Freemasonic group? I don't know. But Cardinal Cupich, at the time Bishop Cupich, yeah, he will. Someone else pointed out, I think it was, they said, well, they probably won't sell to the KKK or like a neo-Nazi group, but everyone else is fair game. BLM? Yeah, definitely. Wouldn't want to be accused of being a racist, right? What about Protestant groups? Probably. You know, even an atheist of goodwill can go to heaven, right, Bishop Aaron? What about an LMNOP group? Well, the church, Father Paul Kalchik's church in Chicago, had a rainbow flag put up by Bernardine. So yeah, most would probably sell to an LMNOP group, but SSPX, oh no, can't do that. All right, Nancy Pelosi had some funny things to say. Don't take yourselves too seriously, people. I'm just going to read these quotes. Don't take yourself too seriously. It's just quotes, you know. Nancy Pelosi said, I'm a devout Catholic, mother of 5 children in 6 years and 1 week. She said that she tells pro-lifers, when you have 5 children in 6 years, then we will talk about it. So she could have killed any one of them under her current law. So what's she talking about? She supports slaughter of the unborn. She said, that was right for me. It's not for me to say what's for everybody else. What's for somebody else. Nor is it right for you, nor is it right for the Supreme Court. This has been a precedent of the court that should be upheld by the court. And to that I have to say, what's the government to tell you what to do with your kids? If you're going to slaughter your children, what's the government to deal with that? Who are they to tell you what to do? Right, Pelosi? She said she respects people's opinions about how they see the law in their personal lives, but then criticized pro-life Americans as people who don't believe in governance. They don't believe in government protecting the environment. They don't believe in the government protecting people's voting rights, but they're really big-time government in your bedroom. Whether it's a woman's right to choose LMNOP, whatever it is, all of a sudden there they are. The abortion issue isn't about your religious belief. It really gets me burned up, in case you didn't notice, because again, I'm very Catholic, devout, practicing, all of that. Yeah, sure. And about that statement about 5 children, hey, there's probably atheists that have 5 children, right? Does that make them a practicing Catholic? Does that make them pro-life? What about the pro-lifers who have 5 children? Can they talk to you about it, Nancy Pelosi? Because they do. Why doesn't Archbishop Cordileone excommunicate this witch? That's kind of what she is. High priestess for the slaughter of the unborn. Archbishop Cordileone was interviewed by Eric Sammons a while ago, and Eric Sammons asked him point blank, why don't you excommunicate Nancy Pelosi? She said a lot of things that aren't Catholic and actually directly contradict the Catholic faith. And Cordileone said, well, dialogue, accompaniment, he just kind of danced around the issue. He talks tough, and I like that. But when it comes to excommunicating someone, pastoral, gotta be pastoral. Look, I'm sure it's not easy being a bishop. I'm sure a lot of us on this channel couldn't do the things a bishop does, and I don't know if we'd have the guts to stand up against some of these particularly anti-Catholic people that say they're a devout, practicing Catholic, but that's why I'm not a bishop, right? All right. German Synodal Way. This is pretty interesting. Bishop Georg Batzing said in a March 16th letter that he sought a real theological exchange with Polish Archbishop Stanislaw Gadecki over the direction of the controversial multi-year process, the German Synodal Way. Batzing responded to an almost 3,000-word letter published on February 22nd, in which Archbishop Gadecki questioned whether the Synodal Way was rooted in the Gospels. So he was, very critical of it. So Gadecki wrote, to us the starting point, no, this is Batzing who wrote, to us, this starting point in abuse, which you do not mention in your letter, is very important. So he's really looking at it, he's not looking at it, but he's trying to sneak around the doctrinal issues that that are coming up, and he says that abuse is his primary focus. Oh, I'm sure. Abuse of doctrine is his primary focus. Namely, he's the one abusing the doctrine. I think it's more about living a sinful lifestyle and embracing that. He said, only if we address the systemic causes of the unspeakable suffering brought upon people by representatives of the church, mostly priests, will it be possible at all to reopen the space in which a proclamation of the good news meets with open ears. That's a liberal tactic, kind of trying to deflect and trying to blame some other point. And this is we saw this a lot in 2018. The Catholics claimed that it was an issue of LMNOP, priests who were abusing men, attracted to men. That was the problem. But a lot of the far left individuals, they said, we should have married priests. We should allow married priests. We should allow women priests. They would never have allowed this to happen. New credibility and new trust in the public and among the faithful, which we have squandered. In this sense, the synodal way is a way of conversion and renewal, as it says in its statutes, a way that also lets us learn anew as we walk. So Bishop Batzing is converting to a new religion. It's not Catholic. Sorry. The German synodal way is the way away from the Catholic Church. synodal way is by no means simply dependent on current developments in psychology and social sciences, but rather that Holy Scripture is the highest guideline. But that alongside this living tradition, the signs of the times emphasized by the Second Vatican Council, the sense of faith of the faithful, the magisterium, and theology and mutual connection are also fundamental. So Scripture is a guideline. It's not doctrine. It's a guideline. But alongside this living tradition, of course, typical common liberal tactic, using the terms, oh, I'm a traditionalist. I believe in Vatican II. And guess what? Here we go. Bishop Barron says the exact same thing as Bishop Batson. I'm living tradition. This is tradition. We're making it up as we go. I mean, how ridiculous. Does anyone actually believe this? The signs of the times emphasized by the Second Vatican Council. Here's another point. This is what Vatican II means to him. What does Vatican II mean to you? It means something different to everyone. That's why whenever people say, oh, the Novus Ordo is not as Vatican II intended. Oh, really? Because a lot of people interpret it a different way. In fact, everyone has their own interpretation of Vatican II. Everyone can interpret it how they want. That's not the intention of Vatican II. Oh, but it is. I think all the different council fathers had different interpretations of Vatican II as well. All are welcome, right? And everyone has a different opinion of Vatican II. All right, getting to the last news item here. Bishop Mario Dorsonville, Auxiliary Bishop of Washington, D.C., was interviewed about immigration. He said the future of U.S. Catholicism is brown. And I don't get particularly outraged about this because Bishop Dorsonville is all about open borders. And that's just where he stands on that issue. And the USCCB makes, well, they were making $70 million a year under Obama off of the U.S. government for immigration. I think it went up to 80, but then when Trump took office, it went down to 48, and then the urgent message of immigration became even more of a priority for the USCCB because their money was being cut by a third. So Bishop Dorsonville is talking, but I hear the money talking. Anyway, he said at this moment there are almost 67 million of us Catholics in the United States, so that's Hispanics. Of those, between 32 and 33 million are Hispanic. Oh, us, okay. There are 67 million Catholics. Among that, 32 and 33 million are Hispanic. So that's about half of United States Catholics are Hispanic. We see that white Catholics are decreasing while the other cultural groups are growing. That's bad for whites, but I don't see myself as necessarily like part of a white group. I see myself as part of a Catholic group, and so it doesn't matter who attends my Latin Mass. I'm happy to see you there, no matter what your skin color is. He says this poses an additional challenge, referring to probably the decreasing numbers, the shortage of bilingual U.S. clergy. Bringing a priest from another region isn't the same as training him here in the United States. We bishops prefer to have trained clergy here rather than from abroad for two main reasons. First, because these clergy are not permanent. At some point, they'll have to return back to their original diocese. And second, because there are difficulties with visas. Yeah, I get that. So that's one thing. But I guess... All right, let me read this next, and then I'll give you my thoughts on that. He said, there are some dioceses in the south and the southeast of the country that no longer ordain priests who do not have the ability to celebrate the sacraments in Spanish. Okay. So, taking that statement, and let's go back to Pope Francis' statement where he's concerned about the decline in vocations. Do you wonder why? Are you excluding priests who would otherwise... How about bilingual priests who know Latin in the native language, the vernacular? Whoa, wouldn't that be cool? He said it's a requirement, the requirement to ordain bilingual clergy. It's a requirement without which no mission is conceivable because the churches are full of Hispanics. Okay, so really, wouldn't it be really cool? Because there are plenty of Spanish-speaking, native Spanish speakers in the United States, and not all of them know English. Wouldn't it be really cool if there was a common language in the Catholic faith that would unite all these people together so they could attend the same liturgy and understand it? Wouldn't that be really cool? Oh, wait, we already have that. It's Latin. Okay. Um, so this is all about money from the U.S. government, nothing about language, because if they were really concerned, then they would have Latin masses and everyone would understand it. Now, for the sermon, most religious orders, in most Latin mass religious orders, the priests preach a sermon once a week on Sundays. Or not once, but at Sunday masses. The weekday masses you don't even need a sermon. And so here is where the importance of language would come in. If they could preach a sermon, that's really all it comes down to, and that's really all I care about. All right, let's get to the live chat. I see there were a lot of spam comments, and if you see any, please report them. I tried to take care of it when I could, but that person won't be back, but unfortunately, there will be others that are back. So, looking at Kansas City Royals fan, thank you for joining me on the live stream, everyone. The prayers had Masonic references, but otherwise it did mention Russia. Parolin thinks communism is the best implementation of Catholic social teaching. One of the Vatican employees said it was, what was it? China best exemplifies Catholic social teaching. That's great. And that's probably, how much is that worth? $2 billion? I don't know. So Mimi says, yes, I believe it fulfilled Our Lady's request. Even when Moses messed up and struck the rock, water still was expelled. There you go. I don't know. Time will tell. I don't want to say, to me, I'm not the judge. God's the judge. So we'll see if it fulfills Our Lady's request. I don't know. This chat needs a moderator for the spamming. Sorry, I don't know. I don't see. That's the point. This video, I'll be lucky to make 50 cents off this video. So I can't afford a moderator. And plus, are you willing to are you willing to moderate the chat? I don't know. How many people do we have on the live stream at a time? Like right now there's 6. So who's going to moderate for me? Sold a Catholic Church to be desecrated by the pagans. Angry words. There you go. There you go. So, thank you everyone for watching EVTN News. Thanks for commenting. Leave a comment. What do you think? Any ideas on the news? Do you have any thoughts? I always like to hear your feedback. Thank you so much for watching. This has been EVTN News. We are the laity, and we will not be silent.